Litecoin has been dropping a little bit recently. I keep an eye on the Litecoin price. I have a little widget on my phone, and I've been watching it since this summer. I remember in June, it was about 30 or 33 Litecoins per Bitcoin. That was like the ratio between Litecoin and Bitcoin. And now it's more like 60 Litecoins per Bitcoin. Or more, actually. So Litecoins have been dropping in value relative to Bitcoin. And then also in terms of the US dollar price, Litecoins were closer to $3 each in the last quarter, I guess. And then recently, over the past couple months, and especially over the past couple weeks, they've been down below $2, just under $2. And so I wonder, does this have something to do with Atlantis, the drug marketplace that kind of shut down a couple weeks before the Silk Road shut down? The Pirate Bay accepted Litecoin donations, I think, before Bitcoin.
They took Litecoin before Bitcoin.
Yeah, or they were favoring Litecoin or something like that. So yeah, there are like definitely people who are Litecoin fanboys and fangirls out there for sure. And I'm not sure exactly why that is, and I'm not sure what the price drop is. And of course, all we can do is speculate. We really don't know. But do you guys have any theories?
If we're going to be wildly speculating, there are a few things. First off, we've been waiting for mt.gox, right, to take on Litecoin. And they have been talking since about June now, not really recently, but at that point, before they had a bunch of problems, they were talking about bringing on Litecoin as the next tradable currency on the mt.gox platform. And obviously, this was at a point where mt.gox was, again, the trading platform. So it was much bigger news than I think it would be if it happened right now. The question I always come back to is, does the price matter, right? And I think with Bitcoin, you can make an argument that the price doesn't really matter. But I think that with something like Litecoin, the price kind of does matter, because the price now is an indicator of where the price will be in the future, since you don't have that fundamental utility to fall back on in the same way that Bitcoin does.
If you translate the Litecoin price, like Litecoin's been between $2 and $3 in the last maybe 6 months. So if it drops from $3 to $2, suddenly it's lost 33% of its value, right? That would be like Bitcoin going from 100 down to 66. That's a huge drop. So yes, what's going on? I like that theory about just the kind of stalling of having Litecoin on different exchanges. Mt.gox announced, I think they tweeted in July that, oh yeah, it's going to be ready in July. It's already built into their API for Litecoin trading on Mt.gox. Then they said, oh yeah, it's going to be ready in September. Never came in September either. And then now they've got so many problems that it may never happen. So maybe people have just given up. They're less enthusiastic that Litecoin is ever going to be on any of the major exchanges. And even if it gets on Mt.gox, it may not be a major exchange by the time it does. There was another exchange called Litetree that was opening. They actually sent me a press release to my Let's Talk Bitcoin address. And so I checked them out, and it was supposed to be exclusively for Litecoin trading. So I sent one Litecoin into the exchange and I tried to sell it. I was getting error messages every time I tried to make a trade order. It just didn't work. It really just wasn't ready for prime time. And at first they had partnered with Dwolla, and then they announced that Dwolla had cut them off. And this was back maybe a couple of months ago at the end of August or something. There isn't really a big exchange to trade Litecoin on. There's not even a local Litecoins. You could trade Litecoins on local Bitcoins, but they don't have the escrow support for Litecoin in there yet. So I think maybe you're right, Adam. It is like an infrastructure problem. There are just not as many resources to use to trade Litecoins as there are with Bitcoins. And maybe people are losing steam as far as getting excited for Litecoins to come into more exchanges and stuff like that.
Well, the thing that you could think about is that if the market is a forward-looking pricing mechanism, right, then if people thought that it was going to go up in value because of something like it coming onto mt.gox to trade, then that means that the price would have gone up well in advance of that happening. So that means that the price actually, this might be a real price we're looking at now, whereas for the last 6 months, we've been looking at an inflated price because it was with the expectation that those Litecoins would then go up in value when they were traded in a more liquid market like mt.gox. So, I think that's the bigger question is this a real price, or is this a deflated price from what a real price? There's no way to figure this out, but
I think they're all a real price. And also you could say that about Bitcoin too, yeah. Right? Is 150 whatever a real price for Bitcoin right now, or is it inflated, deflated? Is there manipulation? People are always claiming manipulation in the gold and silver markets, and Bitcoin is kind of no different, and Litecoin too. So I always sort of trust that whatever the price is, yes, that's the real price. That's the average of a bunch of information that one person really can't know. It's a marketplace coming together and settling on a price point.
Bottom line here is that mt.gox has really lost its ability to help any aspect of any virtual currency. But it does occasionally take a dump in the punch bowl and blow up a currency or destroy the value of an entire group of investors. So, mt.gox is really just flailing around and breaking stuff right now. I think they've lost the ability to help virtual currencies.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. The wrecking ball analogy really is true. It may have at one point been a functional thing, but at this point, it's just, moving around wildly, doing damage to everything it touches. I mean, it's funny. We talk about bitcoinaverage.com. You can on bitcoinaverage.com click a button and completely remove Mt. Gox from the pricing structure. And it's the only exchange out there you can do that with. I think that says something.
There's a very thin line between being the life of the party and throwing up on grandma's shoes.
Let's play out the logic for a second. So what needs to happen for Litecoin to be able to get out from under the shadow that it seems to be under right now? Whether it be people's expectations or a lack of utility or whatever. I mean, what actually would make this work?
Survival. Both Bitcoin and Litecoin and pretty much any other virtual currency that's in this situation, all it needs to do to succeed is survive. Every crisis that doesn't kill a currency and leaves it even with a residual value that's worth trading on a virtual currency exchange, for example, with another fungible commodity or currency. If it doesn't kill it, it only makes it stronger. I think the same can be said for Litecoin. At the end of the day, the reason I'm interested in Litecoin is a combination of interesting features and a founder who has done all the right moves and continues to make all the right moves. Those are the reasons I invest in it. So I think a lot of people are willing to wait around and see how many more hits Litecoin can take without collapsing. And that's value right there.
I agree with you, Andreas. I'm not selling my Litecoins just yet. I think it might be an interesting buying opportunity. We could see a bubble perhaps in Litecoin price if it actually does end up on one of these exchanges, or if something like Local Bitcoins picks up Litecoin support, makes it easier for people to trade it. But we have no way of knowing when or if that is going to happen. All I guess we can kind of do is keep using it if we believe in it, right?
As a currency, it really proves the point that its primary value comes from good stewardship and governance by the founder. I think that's an important point.
One of the things that I'm really interested in, and after having this recent experience selling these Bitcoin video passes and using the BitCredit system, I really, really think that we're going to wind up with payment infrastructures that are cryptocurrency agnostic, right? Where it doesn't necessarily matter if you're funding with Bitcoin or Litecoin or whatever. I mean, pick your coin. Ultimately, they use the same types of infrastructures. And so the ways that you need to modify these systems in order to be able to accept multiple different types of things, actually, the infrastructure mostly is the same. It's just the specifics that need to be modified and added to. So I really think that Litecoin is in a situation that a lot of coins are in right now, which is that, yes, it's promising for whatever the reason is. In the case of Litecoin, I think the argument can definitely be made. It's about the development team and the community and the longevity, because again, it's had that secondary status now for a long time. Even, right or wrong, that becomes powerful. It's about being able to find ways where you don't, as a new altcoin, have to go in and convince every vendor again, hey, I know you already accept 7 cryptocurrencies. Here's another one you should accept, and these are the reasons why. It needs to all be one packaged solution that vendors or people can just integrate and accept everything. And that will, I think, truly let the market exist on its merits rather than existing on depending on Bitcoin or any of these other scenarios that we see people using out there right now. It has to be about using the currency as the currency.
It's kind of like what we talked about before with the counterfeit 20s versus the ones that came from the Federal Reserve. If people believe in it, then it's got some value. Like there's an element of that to Bitcoin and Litecoin and other cryptocurrencies as well. It's an interesting opportunity right now because the feds apparently have seized, on the order of 27,000 Bitcoins, from the Silk Road. And then there's another, how many Bitcoins is it? Several million. It's something like $80 million of Bitcoins that are locked up in this wallet that only Ross Ulbricht has the key allegedly to. Potentially, that is a huge percent. That's like 5% of all the Bitcoins that are out there right now that could be just gone, like taken off the table, off the market. Maybe those will be locked up forever.
That's great.
Yeah, I think that's great too, because then it'll increase the the value of the remaining Bitcoins. But will some people turn to stuff like Litecoins and other altcoins because it's just the Bitcoins are in such short supply and they're going up so much that maybe we'll want to look into some alternatives. I don't know, but I think it'll be interesting to see.
I think the divisibility of cryptocurrencies makes this a sort of moot point.
There's always that psychological aspect, though. People want 1 Bitcoin or 2 Bitcoin. 0.002 is just not the same as, a quarter or a nickel or whatever, right?
You're right. It's totally a perception thing. But at the same time, if I can buy something worth $50 for, 0.4 Bitcoin, then, I'm just saying that math cuts both ways. And the perception is definitely there so that when you're buying them, you feel like you're not getting a lot for your money, but then you're spending them and you feel like you're getting a lot for your money.
I'm fractionally rich.
Yeah, right. Exactly. No, I mean, but that does bring up an interesting question. Do you think that there is a future out there, either of you, where people are using fractions of Bitcoins and being happy about it? And like, that's just a normal part of life where instead of having, it be $20, it's 0.02 or 0.002.
Maybe we can harken back to Let's Talk Bitcoin episode 1 and talk about the switch to millips. That could happen sooner rather than later. But I also get it that it's just another thing to explain. Like if someone doesn't know what Bitcoin is and they're just introduced to the concept, and then you're like, oh, by the way, when you go to buy a cup of coffee, it's not really a Bitcoin. It's like you're sending 2 millibits or something like that. That's an extra layer of confusion for them, and they're more likely to throw up their hands and say, this doesn't make sense.
What is this, drachmas?
So maybe it's not the nomenclature that's the problem so much as it is the pace that we're on right now. Because I don't think, you look at the way that Satoshi laid out mining and distribution of the currency. And I think that by the time we got now 5 years into the life of Bitcoin, I don't think it was expected to be quite as popular as it is. And I don't think that the price was expected to have appreciated quite as much as it did. So, it seems like we have a series of tipping points in our future where we'll pass a certain threshold that we can't even begin to describe or identify right now. A whole other set of groups are going to rush into it, and the price will go up a lot more because of that enhanced utilization and utility. If that same progression took 20 years, would it be a big deal to be talking about these decimals, or would it feel like more of a natural deflationary process since it's happening over a long period of time?
Well, yeah, there's nothing natural about this process right now. We're experiencing hockey stick growth on pretty much every parameter in Bitcoin. So at the moment, we're in the explosive phase. And Bitcoin is expanding faster than some of its feedback loops, and that leads to volatility. That's fine. I was watching just yesterday a show from January 2012, a TV show called The Good Wife, which is a legal drama, and they had an episode about Bitcoin. Who is Satoshi? And it was interesting just because having taken place in January 2012, the entire episode was based around a $3 per Bitcoin price point. And the conversation was so different than what you'd envision it to be today. So it's nice to travel back in time and see how much things have changed in just a year and a half.
You're listening to Let's Talk Bitcoin, the premier audiocast providing news and insights that cover the rapidly evolving world of digital money. Our twice-weekly shows include analysis of late-breaking news, updates on key technical, business, and regulatory issues, and in-depth interviews with the key people driving the new digital economy. Let's Talk Bitcoin offers sponsors an attractive way to reach a targeted and savvy audience. For more information, email sponsors@letstalkbitcoin.com.